your girl Gloria from Heart of the City, San Diego, and the Gloria Medrano podcast. And I am live. How's it going, everybody? I'm tuning in. It is a Tuesday, and I wanted to see how many people are around on a Tuesday. So I couldn't. I usually pop in every Sunday at 8 p.m. Couldn't be with you guys this Sunday, but I will be with you guys next Sunday. And then in the summertime, I'm usually not doing a regular programming with a series of like a ongoing lesson plan. That usually starts in the winter months, soon as everybody starts going back to school and getting regular schedules. During the summertime, everybody's doing stuff outdoors and stuff, so I am doing the same thing. And so what I teach on is emotional healing, basically. And but there's a lot of leadership skills in that what I teach when I'm teaching emotional healing, because it deals with how to regulate your emotions in different settings, things that you might have to endure, whether it be disciplinary or whether it be, unsatisfactory, that you're not, that you aren't, able to flourish in what you feel driven to do, right? What you feel best at. And, maybe your workplace isn't allowing you, they're just kind of capping you to stay in that position that you are in right now, and you want to grow in the company, you want to do more, you want to expand, you want to, bring the wealth of information or life experience that you have to the company. But in some companies, they just don't do that, and then you start to think, maybe I want to build a business, right? Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. And you want to start to explore those ideas. Well, I have been exploring those ideas. I've worked for companies. I've worked for ministries. And so now, I in the doing all of that, I have also learned how to build a website, because, here I am, I'm ministering for over 40 years now. So that tells you that I know some things, right? There are some things that I can tell you about leadership and people and things like that. But, and I did it overseas. I'm from San Diego, born and raised, but I went overseas to England, and I spent many years there raising my children. My children all went to, the school system there, the public school system. They didn't go to American schools like a lot of people do. But, they went to school there and grew up there. So it's their home. They know how to navigate there, work there, and, they have driver's license there and cars and, homes, buy homes and things like that. So, but in the time I moved back home, after my father died, and then, I got homesick, and, in all of the moving around, I have had to reinvent myself and, get a job and learn all the, so I came back to my home country, which is America, San Diego, as kind of, with this immigrant mentality that I could start all over. And it was kind of fun to me. It was not like, it was hard. It was scary. I was horrified, like terrified. at the same time, it was like fulfilling. I love the adventure of navigation and exploration and learning. And so all of that is me. So I started to do that. I started to learn. I started to how do I do this? Well, because I didn't have the money, because I was just getting started, seeing this guy on, Facebook was this fascinating brand new thing, and ooh, I could see all my friends all at once, and then I seen this one guy, in one other church, and it was I only seen those two people, right? And I seen him go live when the lives came into existence, on Facebook. I seen him do a live, and I was like, what is he doing? And I always laugh and tell him, I've told him this before, you remind him, because he has the same Regis Philbin accent, right? from up in that area. And so I said, I thought you were doing a talk show, I thought you were like Regis Philbin. And he starts laughing so big. Well, I seen him talking on there, and I know about self-development, and I studied all this Dale Carnegie and John Maxwell stuff, right? So he's interviewing, he's doing a talk show on just a regular Facebook, and the first one I've ever seen. And so I was like, what is he doing? And then I was like, and so he's talking to a gym instructor, and it was this gym instructor who was trying to build his own gym, leading and navigating that, and stuff. And I was like, well, this is cool. Okay, wait. So they're saying this, they're saying that, talking about leadership, talking about self-development and things. I was like, I know all this stuff. So I'm commenting in the comments, right? I see you there, and so I'm commenting, and he says, I said, yeah, I know how to do this, and have you heard of this person, and so naming these books that I've read, and he's like, yeah, I know these people. So he says, hey, you, and he's on the live, and he's talking to me through the live on Facebook, and he's saying, hey, you're coming on my show. I was like, okay. And I'm, talking all big and bad, but I was scared. So I was like, no problem, I'll be there, but once, and I didn't think, he didn't know how to contact me, so I didn't think he was going to contact me. But then suddenly he calls. My friend knew him, and he got my number, and he calls me, and he says, hey, we're going to book you in to come on my show. And then I was like, oh my God, he called me. And so, I'm treating him I view him I still do view him like he's like a star, right? He's like this he's like a celebrity. I'm like, whoa, he called me. And so, the day came when I was to travel up to go, be in the interview, the first ever podcast that I have ever done. And that day I got dressed and everything, and I was like, oh man, how do I tell him that my car broke down? I got sick. I developed a little cough. I was terrified. I didn't want to go. I was trying to not go so bad. I was so scared. But I still, thinking all these thoughts were going through my head. How do I tell him I'm sick? And still got in my car, still went all the way up there. And even in the parking lot, as I'm getting out of the car, I'm thinking, I'm getting back in this car. I'm not gonna go. And he comes out, he sees me there, and he's like, hey, you made it, blah, blah, whatever. And so he takes me down to the studio room where we're gonna, go podcast live. And we do all of the taking the photo that you do, and then you do the introductions and stuff, right? So I was like, oh man. Once we got started, it was like second nature to me. It was like, if there's anything that I know how to talk about, it's about, my journey. And my journey is like a crazy, adventurous. I'm a former motocross athlete. How did I become that? Who were my parents, and how did my parents become who they are? And all of that. The story is humongous. It's adventurous, and it's who I am today, how I got to be who I am today, right? And doing, a YouTube and things. And, and it really is, you don't become who you are by yourself. There's a lot of things that happen along the way. And there's also misfortunes that happen along the way. There's the, the boss who you can't stand, pushed you out to go, find other things to do, there's the failures, you failed at this, you failed at that, right? When I was first learning how to do motocross, I wanted to do a wheelie, and I told my dad, I want to do a wheelie. And he goes, are you sure you want to do a wheelie? Because, I'm a girly and everything. I could ride the motorcycle, but I wanted to progress. I wanted to get better. I seen another girl out, at the track where we used to ride, and, she was, riding and stuff. And I was like, I want to be able to ride better than that, right? Because it's just that, competitive spirit in me. And I said, I tried to do the wheelie, and, I nearly crashed into some wood pile that had like old nails in it and stuff. Thankfully, there's just the trauma of, just remembering that and what could have happened terrifies me, but that never happened. I did fall. And I didn't crash into the pile of wood. I just fell before it. But I was scared to get back on the motorcycle. And my dad was like, no, you need to get back on right away. Otherwise, you're going to always be scared. And so at least just get past it by just riding. Just ride around a little bit, And then if you want to go back to doing the wheelie, we'll go back to doing the wheelie, right? But I didn't want the pressure of my dad watching me try to practice this wheelie. So I said, okay, I'll just ride a little bit, And then when he wasn't looking, I was practicing just because I didn't want the pressure of him watching, right? That I had to do this thing. And so I finally got to, felt what it felt like to lift it up and things. And then it got better. I practiced all the time, like I was obsessed. And then, I learned how to work the brakes once it was up, and it just progressed and progressed like we do, right? I failed miserably a lot of times at that, and I sometimes even lifted it up. And one time the throttle got stuck. It used to be sticky, and you'd have to like push it back. And I was up in a wheelie, and I had to I was trying to push it back, but it wouldn't. I didn't get to do it, and so it flipped me back. And so many crashes, so many, different situations in that, fell in front of all the boys laughing at me, and, they didn't want the girls around doing this stuff, and they just, it just was just so many different things. So, the things I had to have learned some resilience, right, in the whole thing. You had to have learned something. But it's not about it. We all have learned something along the way in our lives. But it's how do you know how to tell the story of that? So when I seen this guy do the live and I went on there, I knew that I could tell the story. Okay, I was confident about telling the story. How did I get more confident about telling the story? Ministry, I was a church leader for, a very long time. And, in your church ministry, you're telling, it's called a testimony. You're sharing your testimony, the story of who, where you were before and who you are today through Jesus. How did Jesus change your life, right? Well, I know that story very, very well. I've told it a billion zillion times, and so I just needed to tell it to an audience that I did not know. And so, which felt kind of weird, what are my Christian friends going to say, that I'm on this secular thing with this man who is like a celebrity, right? And so, they're going to say, oh my gosh, she backslid. She's not a Christian anymore, So I had to get past the mentality of what do people think, So I'm here to tell you that if you're thinking about all this, how do I get started? How do I build a YouTube? How do I do this, right? We all have been there. Any YouTuber that you see out there, they've all been there. We've all had the starting point, okay? But the more you share, the more you tell your story, the more because your story is always going to change. I mean, my story has changed from the very beginning of when I first became a Christian, right? It's not the same anymore. When I first became a Christian, I was just, a young girl, in my career. And, as an accountant, which was the most boring thing I've ever done in my whole life. But, it was just it was presented to me at a trade school that I went to. And I was like, I could finish in a short amount of time, and I could get, a career going fast. I was living in my car, so I needed to get a career going real fast here, okay? So I picked that, and I did it, and I landed a job, and amazingly enough, God brought all these amazing people in my life. And so my first career boss was he basically, there's so many different things I learned there, but one of them was, that your customer is always right. So he's like, you're not going to come into my store and argue with my customers, okay? And he would tell me off all the time. And he was like this loud mouth, guy from Virginia who was, a Vietnam vet, and, had this accent, like, that was like hillbilly accent. He would be like, what you doing now? You're not going to do that up in here, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, man, don't want to make him mad. He basically sent me to Dale Carnegie School. He sent me to Dale Carnegie School, which is how to, how, like, it's about self-development and self-awareness, basically. And, teaching you, how to, how to have a conversation with someone. One of the things that my first career boss told me, which is extremely important in everything that you do, is to at least know the headlines in the newspaper. So he said, always have a newspaper, and always at least read the headlines, right? So that you know what's going on in your world. And if you can, know what's going on in business in your city. Know what's going on in your city. So those were really highly important things that he taught me, right? And I had no clue. I didn't know anything to do that. That was like, a lot of people already know this as we get older, right? I had no clue of any of that at all. So I would read the headlines in the newspaper before I'd go to work, because he would ask me, did you read the headlines? Okay, he would test me. Okay, well, who's playing what? Who's playing? How the Padres doing? Who are they playing against next? And I was like, I don't know any of that. Like that, I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. It's not in interest to me. But that's the whole point. We have to know a lot of different things to be able to know what other people want or need to talk about, right? So once a customer is coming into your company, what is their want and their need that you have to fulfill for them? Because you may not like it, but it's something that they want and they need. So you have to be able to explore that need for them, okay? So, and that requires you to know some things about a lot of things. So, and that comes from, the headlines in the newspaper and stuff like that. So, and people pick you because of, you being able to conversate with them about something, that they might be interested in, whether it be kids, grandkids, or, whether it be like, business or different things like that. So, it's just, for me, it's ministry, and, people that come follow me are lots of random people cycling around, coming on. And then sometimes people will follow me because they're like, oh, hey, I liked what she said there and this and that, that could help me in a certain way. So lately I've been helping people who are just getting started in their businesses, finding, I think it's easy because I'm already doing it, living in it. But other people are like, oh my, it's overwhelming. I remember being overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this, right? Such as the story that I told you about doing my first podcast. I was like, I don't think I can do this. This is like I went from, there's a brand new thing called a live on a Facebook, which I know nothing about, to, within maybe 2 to 3 months, bam, I'm on somebody's podcast, and I don't even know what a podcast is or the word. I'm thinking it's a radio show, like, and I'm like, what am I doing? How, I don't know what, what to do, what that looks like. And so, but you have to start somewhere. And I know that part. I knew that part, just from being an athlete. So, so then hi, I see you there. So do it, and do it scared. Just, even if you fail at it, right? You will learn that, every single person has had to start somewhere. If you think about Michael Jordan, which I don't know a whole lot about Michael Jordan, but I love the story that I hear all the time about his journey. That he went into different other sports before he became the Michael Jordan of basketball, and he didn't do very well at the other sports, and he got a lot of like criticism for it or whatever. And maybe it wasn't that he didn't like continue on that, but he kept exploring different things, right? He kept trying and kept trying, basically. You hear stories of all the different, I've heard so many stories. I've heard, my boss's story when my very first career boss, and he was, trying to build his business and stuff. And he was like, this is his baby. He's not going to let it go. So he's not going to let anyone come in here and, think they know it all and stuff. He's going to want to train them and stuff, right? On how to take care of this business in the way that he likes it done. So that's why he sent me to a Dale Carnegie course. and gave me some things to practice along the way, and I used them. And I didn't stay there because then I had an opportunity to leave to England, which I had no clue what in the world it was going to be like to go and live. I never lived in another country when I took on the opportunity to go to England. And it was not really particularly scary because I said, before I go, I'm going to go and see where I'm going to live. And the guy who was interviewing us said I was the only woman that he picked us because I was the only woman that came and the only woman that, went out on outreach. Because when I came, I said, I want you to take me to the most dangerous area that I will be, where I will be living. What is the most dangerous area that is closest to my home where I'm going to be living with my kids? I want to know what that is like. So he took me to this apartment complex, which was much like if you've ever been to like LA or someplace like that, which they have, what is called the projects, which are like low income apartment housing type things. And that was like down the street from where I lived in England. And at the time, it was notorious in all of the East End that complex was, like the worst of the worst, right? And so sure enough, it was. But I went down there and I said, okay, I want to go see it. I want to actually be in it and see it and feel it. And so this was this old 80s punk rocker guy comes walking up, and he's just like the spiky hair and all of the chains all stuck inside of his mouth, and ear piercing, the piercing of the chain was coming out and it was hanging out, and he just spikes everywhere, and he just looked like, just don't talk to me kind of, and I've studied self-development and things like that, so I said, let me just see if he doesn't want to be talked to. And so, I was, the men were over there chatting with each other, and I said, I just said, I have to see before I move here if this is what God wants me to do, and can I do this? And so, I've been in the punk scene, in my lifetime. And so, but, the 80s punk scene in England, in London, was something that I loved, and so to see it actually playing out in front of my face right here, and I'm in England, I was like, I have to feel the whole thing. So I walked up and I wanted to chat with him. So I said, hey, and I introduced myself. I'm going to be living over there in that church. Yeah, are you familiar with that church down there? And I just kind of made a joke. And he's like, yeah. He goes, I used to go there when I was a kid to Sunday school. And I was like, what? No way. And he's like, yeah. And he goes, I've tried to go back in there just to go and, go to a service or something. But the old guy at the door, he won't let me go in. And he says that, I can't go in looking like I look. I was like, what? And then I go, who? Because we knew, I haven't met everybody yet. And so he said, I don't know his name, but he looks like this. And when I met the guy, I knew it was him. I knew it was him just because of the guy had such a bad attitude at church, a church guy, a church man, an old man. And I was like, oh my gosh, no way. And so I go, well, I'm going to be living there now. So if you come, I'm going to be at the door. And I'm going to take you in myself, okay? So he was laughing. And he goes, okay. I go, will you take me up on that offer? And he goes, yes. So, and he's like, where are you from, mate? And he goes, you're from Canada, huh? I was like, I am not. First of all, don't ever say I'm from California. And so he goes, oh, okay. Because, the other guy, there's another guy here, and he's from Canada. And he kept saying that he was American. I was like, no. And so, because he had the same kind of accent as me. And so he said, So he did. He came to church. This guy came to church, right? And I was his first direct contact because I came to look to see where I was going to live, where my kids, what I was going to be dealing with and stuff, right? And the whole thing in history, just so many people. There are so many youth that I have encountered along the way, that I babysat, that I taught Sunday school to in the most horrific way ever. I was not good at it at all. But today these people have grown up, and now, they follow me on Facebook and stuff, and, they remember the good times. And I was like, I never thought, that they were, I didn't think that they were bored, because they didn't look like they were bored. But I thought, I am like scaring these poor kids, sharing these scary stories in the Bible. And so what I want you to see is that if I can do it, you can do it. If I am sitting here sharing these stories, there's going to come a day when you're going to be sitting here, building a business and sharing stories where you first started, where it was horrified, you failed miserably, you failed, and then you learned something, and then you felt like, you could accomplish something, and then you felt like, oh, I feel like I could teach this thing now, and so, for instance, like riding a motorcycle, I feel like I can teach it to people, right? People, just the rhythm of it and everything is there's a certain rhythm in what you do, and the same thing with life and building a business. There's a certain rhythm in it. There's the part where you're learning to lifting weights, for instance. Okay, when I first started lifting weights, I was like, this is like so hard. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I was like, there's no change. There's no change in my body. Like, is this even, should I even keep doing this? And then I learned that I was doing it wrong. And I was, I was just like flinging myself, I wasn't doing it correctly. And that the results come by doing it correctly, right? That you actually have to engage that muscle. You can't just like swing it. You have to like actually feel the whole movement of it, and in a controlled way. And so when I learned that, then I thought, oh man, I'm getting some results, like, and then, one thing led to another. And then I had to learn, well, I'm not going to look like that person because I'm not eating right. I'm thinking I can go to the gym and do this and then go home and eat whatever I want. Like, yay, I exercise, so I'm going to treat myself to that, piece of cake or whatever. And you can't do that. You did 80% of your exercise and getting the results, that it is 80% of what you eat. And only the other percentage is the actual exercise. So, it is mostly about what you eat. So, that's just some of the things that I talk about here in my podcast and in my stories. I'm telling you a lot about the Word of God, stories in the Bible, and then how to heal emotionally. Because in all these stories, there's an emotional story behind it. There's the part where where I wanted to quit. I didn't want to go anymore. There's places where I was like, man, I don't even know if I want to live anymore. Like, is this what my whole life is going to be like? and then I finished trade school, and I landed a career job, and I was like, oh my gosh, I overcame that. I got my first apartment. I wasn't living in my car anymore, you know. And what people don't know, and I just remembered this right now as I'm talking to you, is that, you know, my mom was living in a, she was living in a home, you know, that was like a, oh gosh, what do you call it? Like she had left my dad. And it's a horrific story, so I can't share it all right now because my mom doesn't like me to share it all the time. But you know, she was not living in a home, and so I actually you know had to start, and I was like, you know, am I always going to be like this? Is it always going to be like this? And I was like freaking out, and I said, so once I landed my career job, I was no longer living in my car. I got my apartment, and then I got my mom in there with me, and also got her a job. I got her a job, and then you know, through her getting her job, she didn't have a car. She had to take public transportation all the way to her job, which was kind of far, which is about an hour and a half. No, not an hour. It was like more than 30 minutes away that she would take the bus. It took her about an hour and a half to get to work. But she did that for a long, long time, got paid really good. And then, you know, we went from that apartment to a bigger apartment, which first we had a 1-bedroom, then we progressed to a 2-bedroom. But, you know, it just kept getting, you know, we just kept getting better and better. And we kept growing and growing, right? And so, you know, it just was, and I was doing it because I felt like responsible. So first I got her out, then I got my little brother out, you know, out off the streets, because we were all on the streets, scattered, but on the streets. And then I got my sister, my baby sister, off the streets. And so, you know, they all were living in the home with me, and then they all got their own homes. So, you know, this all was a result of me being the first to get out and do something, accomplish something. And so, you know, but when people grow up and they become adults, it's their responsibility to keep growing. So I can't keep growing people. I can just keep being an example, right? And so I keep growing, I keep learning, you know, and sometimes there are setbacks. You know, but you just keep progressing. You learn from the setback, and you're adjusting yourself emotionally, man, because you're going back to the, you know, the first thing you think is like, oh, this is so disappointing. This is such a big setback, and I'm so like hurt by this, right? But then you start thinking, wait, hold on a second. If I conquered that thing, which was terrifying, and then I conquered that thing, which was not so terrifying, and then I excelled at this thing, I can totally do this. I can do this, okay? So but you have to take hold of your emotions. You have to be responsible for them. And that's what I'm teaching you when I'm teaching on emotional healing, okay? So it benefits in all aspects of life, wherever you are in your life. So I hope that this little talk has been some kind of a help to you and things. But, you know, I just want to say a little prayer. And Father, I just lift up all of those who are listening. And I just pray, God, that you just, you know, I give you all the glory. I thank you for all that you do, all that you know and are seeing and working out in our lives. And I just pray for, those who are going through hard times, that, they will know that you are walking side by side with them. Because one of the things that I want to share with you is that it is important to go through all of the process. If we just go like from not knowing the steps to just bam, it's given to you, like, with a silver spoon, you don't cherish it. Okay, you take it for granted, and you stop growing. You're just like, okay, you ask a rich person who was born into wealth, what are your dreams? And they don't have any. There's no dreams, no aspirations, no nothing. So they already have they already have it. So they take it all for granted. Okay. And won't know what to do if it's all taken away. Okay. But somebody like me, or maybe you, who has struggled to get there, or maybe you're still working it out. I'm still working it out. But, I know the steps, though. So I know the process. And if anything, if all was taken away from me, I know how to go back to the process, okay? And work my way back. Because I'm not afraid of work. I know what it feels like to do the process. I know that I can do the process. And if you know the process and you know how to get back, the roadmap to get back. I don't know if you've ever been on a road trip and you've gotten lost and you're like, this is back in the days when we had to use a map, a paper map or a map book. I used to get lost all the time. And sometimes, there are certain places where the map isn't like updated, the paper map, and you're like, whoa, that road doesn't go that way anymore. Like, and you have to figure it out. Well, because I learned how to figure it out and I'm not afraid to figure it out, then I can now do that now. But now we have all these wonderful equipments, like, a GPS system that tells you, hey, don't go that way. Don't go that way. Turn right. And sometimes you can override that because that, some people turn right, but it's telling you to turn right, but that there's a way that you like better, and it's still going to get you the same way, but you just like this way better, so you're going to take that way. I do that all the time with my GPS. I'm like, I'm going this way. You could tell other people to go that way, but I'm going this way, right? So you learn how to improvise, navigate, learn the process, grow yourself, and otherwise you don't grow. You just stay doing the same thing and your mind turns off. And I know you don't want that to happen to you, okay? So I'm here to share with you a lot about Jesus and his goodness. If he's here with us, he walks with us, but he wants us to go through the process and be walking with us in that whole process, okay? Because it benefits us. It's good for us to know that. It makes us grow and stronger. All right, I'll let you guys go for now. I love you guys, and I will see you on Sunday. Bye.